For those who are curious about the picture below, that's our new library at my university, so it's quite a relevant picture. I like to put in something nice. This is a good view. It's, I believe, taken from north of here, looking back.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit north of here.
Yeah. But anyway, it's got lovely colours in it, so I've chosen that one. But anyway, okay, well, there's my abstract. Well, okay, that gives you, hopefully everyone's already read that, so you've got some idea of what I'm going to talk about. But before I get started, I like to know what people in my audience know. So, how many people here understand the term tag PDF? Do you know what it means? Okay, so I know some of you do. Okay, so let's ask it the other way around. How many people have no idea what tag PDF actually means? Is there anybody in that? Okay, so that's great. Okay, so that's my first question. What is tag PDF? And I'm going to do it by, I'm going to try and answer that question by working with some examples. And okay, and the examples, I'm going to work everything with Acrobat. So this is using Acrobat Pro at the moment, and it works a lot better if I get out of full screen mode. So that's what I'm going to do. And let's close that off first. Okay, first example. Well, there's another picture of that library at Macquarie. Okay, so this is a conference poster for a conference that we held at Macquarie. The maths department held it last year, December. Okay, so it's not so easy to read bits of it on that screen, but that's kind of indicative of what this talk's all about. Okay, so if you look at this, what do you understand out of this information that's being presented? Okay, it's a conference. It's a poster for a conference, and it's being held at Macquarie University. How do you know that? Because the logo, you can see the logo. Maybe you know that building and you recognise it, and if you can actually read the information there. Sorry, it doesn't look so good from this angle. Is that clear from that angle? No, it's not. Well, in a sense, that's nice. Okay, and you'll see that it's lists of speakers. So if I go in closer, you can see that it's lists of speakers and lists of the program committee and all of that. But what if that's the only way you could ever see it at that kind of size? You can't see the whole picture. How would you get the idea of what the information content of this document really is? Okay, you'd have to try and move around and have a look at bits, but if you could never really get the full big picture, so there ought to be other ways of getting information out of this PDF document, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you. Okay, one thing you might try is to have it read out to you. Okay, so let's read.
61st Annual Meeting of the Australian Mathematical Society, 12th to 15th of December 2017. International speakers: Georgia Bencard, USA; Hannah Neumann, lecturer; Youngju Choi, Korea; Ivan Corwin,
Okay.
USA; Helene Frankowska, France; Andre.
Okay, the words are there, but they're a bit all jumbled up, whatever, so not quite right. You can actually do a better job if you switch this into a different application. So that's Acrobat Pro, the almost current version. If I take it into Acrobat Reader, which is actually an older version, ooh, why has that happened? Okay, maybe it's not. Just check that maybe that was an old. Let's try that again. Oh no, that's not the one I want. That's where we should be. What happened to the poster? There's the poster. That's the old version. No, it's this one. Yeah, okay, so that one. Let's pull that across into Acrobat Reader. Okay, that's better. And then do the same thing. So let's do the read out loud.
Held at Macquarie University. Held at Macquarie University's 61st Annual Meeting of the Australian Mathematical Society, 12th to 15th of December 2017. Start of unnumbered section titled International Speakers. Start of enumerated list. Item, Georgia Bencard, USA, Hannah Neumann lecturer. Item, Youngju Koi, Korea. Item, Ivan Corwin, USA. Item, Helene Frankowska, France. Item, Andrei Okounkov.
Okay, so there's a lot more information actually in the document telling you the structure of the information itself, item by item. This has all been added in programmatically. So if you don't like the fact that it's saying item, we could change that to speaker, speaker, so-and-so, speaker, so-and-so, etc., etc. Okay. So that's the kind of thing, well, that's another view of the information of that document, which is being read out. Okay, do you want to actually see what all the words are? The way, I'll go back to the Acrobat Pro, whereby I can now export to text accessible here, and let's save that. Okay, let's just say new folder. Well, it doesn't have to be XML, but anyway, save that, and then, okay, let's try to do that again because that was getting mixed up with the previous version. Okay, so export to text accessible into there, save, replace, and oh, okay, I did it from the wrong application. Yeah, I've got to do it from the other application, from Reader. Okay, so the interface here is a little bit different. The doesn't have an, yeah, save as other, text, and then text accessible. Okay, so if I say, well, let's just save it at that point, and then, oh, now I have to go and find it and open it. That's a nuisance. Okay, mixing the two applications is a nuisance, but anyway, you can get a file there which does have everything in it. It tells you exactly what was being read out, and you can see the whole thing. Sorry, I didn't work with that. That part didn't, I wasn't quite ready for which folders it was going to end up in. But anyway, so rather than spend time on that, let's go back and look at other ways of handling it. Okay, there's a lot more information here than just that. So let's have a look at what's called the tagging, and here's the tagging. Now, okay, it's probably the screen resolution is not good enough to necessarily read what all these things are, but what I can do is I can select here, and you can see in the main screen which part of the document it's in. So even if that's really, really wide, sorry, so even if that's very large, it's going to show you which part of the document it's in. Okay, so it starts off with the figure and then the headings, okay, broken up into 3 bits, then the section. Inside the section, there's the heading, there's the list of the speakers. I can go into each of those and it's showing in the individual speaker. Okay, so maybe I've got to make that even wider. Okay, and then back to here. And so you can step through all of the information bit by bit, right, all the different names and whatever. Okay, so that's another way of accessing the information, and you can imagine that if this document can do it, or if this application can do it, other applications can be written to access exactly that kind of stream, get you to every individual piece of text, along with a description of what the text is all about in terms of, it's a list item here, right? The label on a list in this case is, there's a tiny little selection down there, so it's kind of empty. And then the body is that selection, and there's the words. So all of this stuff is accessible. Okay, and accessible is, you should think of accessible as meaning not so much that someone with disabilities can access it, but computer software can access every piece and then deliver that information in a way that's appropriate to the person who's wanting to know what the information's all about. Okay, so it's much more general than just supporting people with disabilities. Okay, there's another new feature of Acrobat Pro, which is so new that I'm sure no one else here has ever seen it. So I will go to that. It's called here Dynamic View. I can't actually select it at the moment because this document is a PDF-A and you can't change things inside a PDF-A, or at least you're not supposed to. That's why there's this button here called Enable Editing. Okay, so I've actually already done that. Well, I can do that, enable editing, and it's going to say, yes, okay, we lose information about the PDF-A aspect if we do this, but we can say okay, and then we can go to Dynamic View, and now we can select it, and it says now save this thing, so okay, let's save, and I had a previous version. Well, okay, let's save it in here, and let's say this is now not PDF-A, and so I can save that, and then now it now goes and does some work and creates a new version of the document which has two parts to it. So there's the original part, and there's now the dynamic view part, and the dynamic view part, it's new, they're asking for feedback. Okay, it's now extracted the information out, and it's now, the headings have been seen to be headings, and so you can now click through. Okay, this is all very new. It's picked up the font that was being used. It hasn't got the red background behind it, so that the colour contrast isn't so great. So I'm going to have to report this as a kind of a bug, because the intention for this is to be able to just extract the information in order to be, again, more accessible, having thrown away all the backgrounds and all of that kind of stuff. And so you can now get to these pieces. Again, still slightly buggy in that entries are run together a bit. Each of these commas, in fact, should be on a new line. Well, the commas shouldn't be on a new line, but where there are breaks that are without commas, they should be on new lines. So again, this is very new stuff, right? It's probably less than a couple of months old. Okay, the logo's right down the bottom, don't quite know why that is. And then further down is our society logo. Okay, so there's still a few shortcomings with this, but you can see this is the way Adobe is going to provide alternative views in the PDF files. Okay, and you see there's clearly some it's recognized structure in there. The interesting thing is it hasn't used the structure that we provided. It's built its own structure, which is why some of these things are a little bit iffy at the moment. And of course, developers are trying to say, hey, Adobe, if it's already tagged, please use the tagging that's in there rather than create your own. But that'll happen. That will eventually happen. Okay. Okay, so that's, oops, that's not the one. I'm in the right one. Poster. What happened to where am I? We shouldn't be there. Somehow we've lost the presentation. It's got stuck somewhere, so it should have been in here. But that's producing something else. Okay, let's just open it up again. So, open recent file, Tech Talks, there we go. Okay, and let's just move through. Okay, so there was no actual mathematics in that one. The next example does have mathematics. Oh, I know what's happened, yeah. Okay, so the next one does have some mathematics in it, and this is stuff that corresponded to a course that I was giving last year. It's homework solutions and things. Okay, so you can see there's a fair bit of mathematics in there. If we look at the tagging for this one, then, okay, I've included this for a special reason, and you can see how the tagging is quite detailed. Okay, again, lots of list items and things, and so on, but it's actually not, in a sense, it's not detailed enough. And okay, what I didn't do on the previous one was say, okay, the document claims to be conforming to two different international standards here, PDF-A-3A and PDF-UA. And how do I know that's true? Well, you come to what's called the pre-flight utility, and this contains a whole stack of tests. Okay, very important test is to check that there's nothing wrong with the syntax, so no problems found, similar to what LaTeX ML was doing in the previous talk. Okay, PDF UA, verify compliance with PDF UA, I can do that. And again, there's no problems. Okay, and I can check against the PDF-A standard. There's one here, PDF-A-3A. Again, no problems found. Okay, so that's great. And there's yet another check that one can do for accessibility. If I had the sidebar available here. Okay, so accessibility is further down, it's this one. Okay, there's a full check on accessibility, and you start checking. Okay, and then it produces a report. It says there's two issues here, but these two issues are, okay, logical reading order. There's a comment there, it says needs manual check. So the idea is that a person has to look at it and check and decide that all the information's in the correct order, right? There's no way the program can say, oh yes, everything here's in the right order. It's just a whole bunch of text that's in there in some fashion. Is it in the right order? Have a look, check. We can't test that programmatically. And a color contrast, right? So is there enough contrast between the colors at every stage throughout the document? Again, there's no way that the computer can do such a test. But every other test, and there's about 30 of them, have all been passed, no problems. So everything here is saying this is perfectly okay as an accessible document. But unfortunately, it isn't. It isn't because, okay, so let's have a look at something. Let's pick something with some maths in it. Okay, so this first thing, right, if you just copied everything here, well, let's make it bigger. There is no differentiation between the non-math stuff and the math stuff. So in a sense, this actually, although the automated tests say this is a perfectly good accessible document, the reality is that no, it's not. It's actually breaking rules, okay? Because one of the rules is that all mathematical content should be marked separately as mathematical content. And in this example, it isn't. And I've deliberately done that specifically to say it's not good enough to just run the automated checks. You have to do other checks as well. Okay. So let's move on to the next example. And of course, that's going to require going back through a few of these views, unfortunately. Okay, it's not going to do it that way, is it? Okay, so let's go open up. Okay, I changed something about this, which, oh, that's nice. Let's just come back to it. That's great. Okay, so this is another version. This is actually the solutions, the set of solutions to that set of tutorial exercises. And this one, in fact, now has been tagged such that everything is perfectly correct. Okay, so you can see the detail in the tagging here. Okay, so here's that first, the questions are being set up and then the answers are being given in blue, and you can see how detailed that tagging really is. Okay, so let's get into that list, maybe just that first item, and open that up. It's a list label, at the list body, for each, there's a bit of maths, there's a comma, some words, some more maths, final comma, final full stop, and so on. Okay, so you can see how this is tagged. Every single little piece of logical information is being tagged separately, and it's including all the bits of mathematics. Okay, and now another good way to see just what's in here. I mean, I could try to read this, but of course we don't really have time to do all of that. It's a bit too much. Got other things to do. But there is another way in which we can see what's in there, and that's to export this to XML. If I export this to XML, okay, and that's why I really want an XML folder, and save, and then this then launches Xcode, Apple's Xcode, and okay, all of this is now, this first part's all the metadata that's contained in this file. So here's the title, tutored exercises, the author's name, and so on. Then there's a whole stack of that stuff, a whole stack of metadata, and I can show you a bit more how to see that in a different way. And then there's the bookmarks. The bookmarks are all in here. And then we get into the actual text. So maybe if I can make this bigger, maybe that's a bit bigger, okay. And you see it's produced an XML file now with all of the appropriate tagging. And the interesting thing that's in here is that the alternative text, that the actual LaTeX source is being given as alternative text to each formula. Okay. So a screen reader is supposed to pick up the alternative text and read out the LaTeX source to somebody who is trying to access the information in this way. Okay, and so this, and you can see it's done quite a nice job in the formatting of it all. Okay, you could imagine that the original LaTeX source over here, that the mathematics is not necessarily spaced out all that well, but when it's come through and exported this way, it really looks quite neat and gives you another thing. So this is yet another view of the document. Another way of thinking about this is yet another view of the information that's in this PDF. Okay, so how many different views have we had so far? Okay, so let's go back to Acrobat, and this is going to
many different views to us. How is this played for a job blind person?
Sorry, how
can this be played to a blind person through the machine that uses Braille?
Oh, okay.
Via the PDF?
Okay, no, via the XML.
Via the XML.
That XML would do that because all of that stuff there was pure ordinary text that can then get converted to the appropriate Braille characters, and then that could then operate a Braille keyboard, and then they're viewing the LaTeX source, or they're feeling the LaTeX source character by character, and that's how that could work. Okay. Okay, so now what do I want to do next? I wanted to go back to the talk. Okay, so back to the talk. Let's go back to full screen. Oh, it doesn't want to do it, right, because all right, let's go to full screen this way. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Yeah. Okay, so this one is satisfying the letter of the law for what should be in an accessible document when it declares itself to be accessible, but in fact it wasn't actually satisfying the spirit of the law, whereas this one is doing that. All of the maths is tagged individually. Okay, so that's why I like to look at those two examples. Okay, what's going on here? Well, here's our traditional view of how you get a document into PDF. There's a few dates showing how old the software is. We all know that this software is still being continually worked on. Okay. PDF Tech, when PDF Tech came along, you don't need to go via DVI or don't need to go via PostScript anymore. And so a typical document has some content, and there's a little bit of metadata that gets put in there as well automatically by PDF Tech. Okay. When you go to extra standards, you have to do a lot more. A lot more work needs to be done. There's all of that structure. We saw the structure tree in that tags window. That's all of that structure, and there's a lot more metadata that has to come through as well. Most of that metadata is to satisfy the PDF-A standard, but a lot of that stuff is also useful as part of PDF UA. PDF UA is what requires all of that structure tree, and that's what's going in there. And so that's why I've widened the braces here to say that, okay, this also means that a lot of that information doesn't actually have to go through DVI. It gets picked up in the tech processing via PDF Tech and gets directly constructed as the structure and the metadata. And so at the moment, only PDF Tech is doing this. Okay, it might be possible to do the rest of them and sending everything. But if you to do the rest of them, all of the information has to come down through DVI and then get gazumped into building the PDF. And there's kind of problems in doing that, because if you put too much stuff through the DVI, you've got to be very careful to make sure you haven't actually changed the layout in the visual side of it. You don't want to change the layout for the visual person. You're only wanting to make sure that you're adding extra stuff for all of the other views. Okay, so this is kind of suggesting a possible future work extending into these other drivers. Okay. Okay, so that's the kind of overview of what's happened. We've made a PDF is now a lot larger. There's a lot more stuff in there. Okay, and I can show a bit more of that in the workshop tonight, I suppose. Okay, so now the next question is, well, why do we want to do this? Okay, I would hope that that's all that's necessary, and a lot of you are convinced already. Having the different views is enough. And so morally, we're not trying to discriminate against anybody, even unwittingly. We just want to be able to make sure everyone can get at the information that they need with the resources that are appropriate to themselves. But often that's not enough. So there's other aspects as well. And, well, okay. Many countries are creating laws regarding what has to go in different kinds of publications, particularly academic theses, government documents, and so on. So a couple of days ago, I did a Google search and found these places, theses that have to be PDF-A at all of these places, and there's almost certainly many others as well. Okay, so these are all active links to their documents for their graduate students saying what are the requirements for submitting a thesis. So, you know, that's not too bad. A lot of German and Austrian in there, some Canadians, there's an American one, and I'm sure there's plenty of others. Okay, and other countries are going to go down the same way. Okay, and then various governments have accessibility requirements about publications. Someone was telling me that that's happening here in Brazil as well. The one that's most noticeable or notable is in the US. So back in 2015, how many of you were at Darmstadt? Some of you are at Darmstadt, yeah. Okay, I used these slides at Darmstadt where I said that, okay, the proposal was that if you're going to have PDF as your output format, and of course this is applicable to US government agencies, and there's a whole list of things here, okay, then it's either PDF UA or else you don't use PDF. That was what the proposal was for the rulings, for the revision of these rules for government publications. And okay, this diagram was produced by the PDF-A Association to indicate how PDF UA satisfies most of these WCAG, so that's Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, okay, and that's taken as being the thing that determines whether your documents, or these are the tests that you have to be able to satisfy to decide whether your documents are accessible or not, and applying both to HTML and now also to PDFs, okay? And so the idea, if you mean not PDF, means you had to use HTML because there's nothing else that's accessible to anybody, generally, okay? And so that's what the situation was like back in about 2015 and moving into 2016. The actual ruling came through in January of 2017, and basically here it is. You can read it, and it comes down to this. So it says authoring tools capable of exporting PDF files that conform to PDF 1.7 shall also be capable of exporting PDF files that conform to PDF UA, PDF UA1, which is the standard that those documents were conforming to, okay? And, this was meant to be, everyone was meant to be complying with this by January of this year, okay? Those in America may be able to tell me to what extent this has actually been adopted, but that's what the rules are. And then, of course, one asks the question, well, okay, does that really actually apply to tech-produced stuff? And the answer is, well, yes, you can argue against the wording of the rules and say that maybe tech doesn't actually apply, but that's not really the issue. The issue is that if you are going to be wanting to produce documents for the US government of any kind whatsoever, think of just school books for all the children in the United States at high school level. And if your workflow was not allowing you to produce PDF UA, you're not going to get a contract. That's basically what this means. And that's pretty serious. So I think for us with tech and LaTeX, that we don't want that situation. We don't want people that use our tech and LaTeX to be in that situation where they're disadvantaged because of the tools. And so the only way forward is that we produce PDF UA. And that's what we're trying to do here, okay? Okay, what does this mean for mathematics? Okay, well, the document has to be tagged PDF for starters. No choice. All math inline and displayed has to be tagged as a formula, just like as if it was an image in a document, but the thing is, it doesn't have to be an image. We're not saying that. It just has to be tagged to say it's a formula, and then you're meant to have alternative text describing the expression or the formula in plain language. Well, okay, so let's go back to that. I was doing it by giving the LaTeX source. If you go online into the blind math discussion group and whatever, it's always saying, yeah, the best thing, that for college level mathematics, the best thing for blind people is to give them the LaTeX source. So that's what we do, okay? You could produce alternatives trying to describe the equation in a much more verbose sense. That's going to require a lot of input from the authors to put that extra information in. They don't feel like they want to do that. So if you just pick up the LaTeX source as it is, and that's what people want anyway, that gives them the exact description of what the mathematics is, so do it. And that's what we've chosen to do. If, on the other hand, you are producing materials for primary school children, then almost certainly the LaTeX source is not what you want. You want to put something else, just describing everything in plain language. So that would then mean that there's a lot more work that an author will have to do in order to be able to achieve this. But that's the kind of situation that have to face. Okay, looking into the future, the mathematics could be tagged as presentation MathML, okay? And I've been doing some work on this, or previous years I've given talks on this, where I have converted mathematics from tech into MathML, put the two back together again, and so then produced a document with the right kind of stuff that would be suitable for PDF UA2. I'm not doing that at the moment because that required extra programming, and it's a lot harder to do, and it's going to probably the best way of handling that is to use LaTeX ML, just as Will was telling us about in the previous talk. So that's kind of worked for the future to try and get ourselves to be able to satisfy PDF UA2. PDF UA2 hasn't yet been released. It was due to be released end of last year, then they decided it's not quite good enough yet, so it's been put off, and it probably won't come out until next year. But so that's work for the future, okay. And these are links to the actual specifications in both PDF UA1 and an early draft of PDF UA2, okay. Okay, there's another link here to lists of other accessibility standards. Okay, let's, have I got still some time? Yeah? All right, okay. Okay, I've got, those were kind of mini examples that I showed you. Does it scale up? Yes, it does. Okay, so here's an example of an Annals of Mathematics paper that I did at Boris's request, effectively. Ooh, and it's gone into full screen mode. I didn't want that. So let's go into, okay, so this is Annals of Mathematics. Why can't, yeah, I can spread this out. Doesn't want to do it. Anyway, okay, so again, this claims to be satisfied to standards. We can do the checking. We can check that these really do. Verify compliance with PDF A3. No problems. Okay. Back to essentials. And profiles. PDF UA compliance. Okay, no problems about PDF UA, and there's going to be no problems with the syntax. Okay, so if we look at the tagging, and okay, interesting, you see some interesting things. Okay, you don't actually need to see the words, just simply see what gets highlighted. Okay, in a paper, the top matter, some stuff's at the top, some stuff's at the bottom of the page. Okay, but it's still essentially top matter material, even though it actually appears at the bottom of the page. So, okay, abstracts, keywords, subject class, acknowledgements, copyrights, okay, table of contents, okay, each page has a reference, it's got links, hyperlinks are in there, table of, or next one, okay, all that kind of stuff. So all the kind of stuff that we're used to seeing, and it's all being tagged. Other kinds of content, so section 2, okay. You can see all the little blue boxes, how detailed the tagging really is, okay. Once you get that thing moving, it can take a while to stop, okay. So you can go through all of this kind of thing. And you can see detailed structure in the mathematics, in the theorems, in the content. I'm trying to get to a place where, okay, so we actually have some floats here as well. So let's, okay, can I find the right place where those floats occur? Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, floats, yeah, here we go, float LaTeX figure. Okay, so we're on one page and we have some information here and there's a chapter following, but the next, in the structure, the next item is the float. And it's now showing, so there was nothing here, it's just blank space, but the caption is now being given. Okay, so if you think back to your LaTeX source, then in the LaTeX source, this is the point where that figure information was being declared in the LaTeX source, but it's floated on to the next page. Okay, in the tagging, you don't care about the pages, so the correct place for it to be tagged is where it occurred in the LaTeX source document. And that's what's happening here. So after that proof, then we have the float, and even though it happens to be on the next page, that's going to be irrelevant to people who are not interested in the pagination. Just the fact that that's where it occurs, okay? And so now we come back to the next paragraph and then continue on, okay? Okay, so that kind of thing happens, right? Okay, so that's probably enough. Okay, I've got plenty more examples that I can show, and this kind of thing now really is possible. Okay, it's taken a lot of work. I've got something like 16,000 lines of coding that go behind all of this. What I haven't shown you is that almost nothing has changed in the LaTeX source for these documents, apart from the addition of maybe one command per page. That's what I've got it down to, is a minimum of one command per page, plus a few extra things with the figures. You have to give them, every figure, you have to give it an extra caption rather than the printed caption, extra alternative text, and a few things of that kind, but mostly it's just one extra LaTeX control sequence per page, and we think we can even get rid of that in a lot of circumstances. So, anyway, okay.
So, thank you, Ross, for your talk. Questions?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, okay. I might need this up.
Well, actually, I'm saying this on behalf of Barbara. She basically asks about mathematics in the sense that there has to be something else than just saying, oh, let's say, visually explaining how it looks like. That's not really good, right?
Yeah, right.
But the LaTeX code is always, almost always not really good. Because, I mean, I have seen a lot of LaTeX code in mathematics, and it's usually a very terrible mess.
Yes, yes.
So something in between has to be done in some sense, and the LaTeX code should be probably, I don't know, preprocessed something. I have no idea what should be done exactly.
Yeah,
but converted to something which is human readable and still in line.
Right.
So that's probably, I would say for mathematics, this is the task, right?
Sure. Okay. The point is that for every formula, you can actually give up to 3 different descriptions. And in fact, and perhaps even 4 different descriptions. And it's then a question of actually making use of those alternative descriptions, right? At the moment, I'm only trying to make sure that, well, certainly that the ability to use those different descriptions is available, but I'm not going to spend the time to go through an old paper like this and fill in alternatives in every case. But of course, that is something that we do need to do. We have to show people that it can be done. And of course, what is the most useful in any given situation will depend upon who your readers are, because you have to adapt your description as to who's meant to be reading it, right? So it's absolutely no point giving LaTeX source to primary school children, which is one of the examples I meant. But for college level students and certainly for universities, then they are saying the LaTeX source is what we want. So that's what we do.
I would argue that if you are talking about blind primary school children, that maybe LaTeX. Thank you. I would argue that if you are talking about blind primary school children, well, 2nd grade or 3rd, maybe LaTeX source of a simple equation is what you should give them, because it would be probably the best description of equations. But I'm not a, I'm not a teacher by trade, so I'm not sure.
Exactly right. So I mean, that's not our choice. The thing is, we need to make it available so that people can do that, but it's not our choice as to what goes in there. And so at the moment, I'm just trying to take existing LaTeX documents and do the best I possibly can with that, knowing that I've also got those other methods available to put the extra stuff in, but at the moment not actually making use of it. Yeah.
So,
one comment to you, Tom. I mean, in some sense, if you're looking at existing documents and trying to make those accessible, then there is a certain limit of what you can do automatically. I mean, if you have a textual document and the text is completely rubbish because I do not speak good English, then making it accessible will not make it readable. So there would be the same here with mathematics in the sense that up to now people have doing mathematics on a very visual basis, and a lot of authors, Enrico would have shown us plenty of nice examples of bad mathematics. But I mean, the moment you actually have the situation that new documents are considered to be used for both purposes, I would expect people to start taking as much attention to produce the mathematics suitable if that is a necessary step. Otherwise, there is the extra possibility of actually going into old documents and producing extra text. So I think that's the best of the two worlds.
Yeah, I mean, the way I handle it, I haven't shown an example of it, but I've actually patched LaTeX slash big.
That's the end of all power.
Yeah. I've actually patched LaTeX slash begin command to take an optional argument to be the alternative text that you want to be used for your next environment. So, yeah. I don't know if Frank sort of knows much about this yet, but anyway, so that's the way we do it, because there's a bit of syntax available in LaTeX whereby you can put something in here which can't be used for anything, which has no current use for anything else. So here's a convenient way to add extra stuff in of this nature. Okay, and maybe I'll show this evening in the workshop.
I just want to answer to Frank that teaching authors anything is difficult. And that's experience of all people who are in mathematics production, in production of mathematical articles. Teaching authors anything is difficult. I still have supervisors and people, new old people, using /begin centering for mathematics. And, you know, this is 2018. And so this is the problem. So unless we have some good automated tools, this is going to be very expensive if you want to do it good, because it will be time consuming for the typesetters.
Those things will not be good then, yes.
Yeah, so that's like, I mean, that's the point somehow. Yeah.
As with bad English in an English article, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Either you pay the copy editing or you don't.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Friends, thank you, Rosa.
Yep.
I think we're a bit short on time. So if
We
you
have a
have further
break, you know.
further questions to Ross, I think we can address him during the break. So thank you, Ross, once again.